Candace Owens, as said, she was asked about nationalism. So she said, quote, I think that the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. Okay, so far so good. She goes on to say, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. She goes on to say the problem, what Hitler did wrong, however, is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. I'm thinking about how we could go bad down the line. I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. And I don't know, I mean, there's really nothing of substance in this quote. It's sort of like people's conception of Hitler is just so retarded, just everywhere you look, particularly with conservatives, but also with leftists. I think leftists are actually smarter about Hitler than conservatives. I guess you could just say anything you want about Hitler, like anything is true. He wanted to take over the world and everyone speaking German. Like, people can just make things up like that and nobody really cares if it's accurate. People could say, he was a leftist. He was a communist. Stalin and Hitler fought because they were so similar. Like, it just, like, hurts my brain. Look, I didn't go to college, but I know that that's not true. You know, and you've got people, these major pundits where I don't know if they know what actually happened, but it's just convenient to say other things, or if people are just truly that ignorant, they feel that they could just make things up as they go along. No. For starters, I have to point out, Hitler did not want to take over the world. Hitler did not want everyone speaking German, everyone to be German. You know, it was actually quite the opposite. You know, when Candace Owens said, well, if he just focused on making Germany great again, that would have been fine. Well, you know, his expansionist projects were focused on greater Germany. What's your idea of Germany? You know, the polity that we know now as Germany, the Second Reich, the German Empire, that started in 1871. But Germany predates the modern nation-state of Germany, assembled by Bismarck in 1871, by centuries. You know, the German people existed long before 1871, of course, naturally. Except that after that, you had German peoples in Austria, you had them in Czechoslovakia, you had them in Danzig in Poland. After World War I, you had basically Germany cut up in all these different pieces. And so when Hitler was expanding, it wasn't like, oh, I want everyone to speak German. I want everyone to be, I'm going to take over the world. No. You know, look at the different expansionist projects. He had the Anschluss, where he took over Austria. Austria is part of Greater Germany. Austria is historically German. He took the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, historically German, big German population, and then he invaded Poland. He didn't take over Poland because this was part of his conquest of the planet. He invaded Poland to take Danzig, which was a corridor that was separated from Germany because of the Treaty of Versailles. So people like to say, oh, Hitler wanted us to be speaking German here in America. Hitler wanted the whole planet to be white. But you look at the expansionist projects, it wasn't just this sort of reckless tanks everywhere. I mean, it was very targeted at taking back, you know, the Rhineland, taking back different parts of Germany that were cut off or separated, or German peoples that were sort of alienated from the German nation. So when people say, oh, well, he was a globalist, he was this universalist, he wanted the whole... Well, that's not quite true. He was making Germany great again in his own special way, in a more classical way, making the German nation, if the German nation is considered as the German peoples, he was making that German nation great again. But anyway, I just think it's kind of funny that people consider Hitler a globalist. I mean, she totally leaves out, you know, maybe the one thing that he did wrong, Candace Owens. I don't know if you know this, but what about all those Jews that he killed? Hello? Yeah, I guess the only problem was that he was a globalist. How about the 200 to 300,000 Jews that he killed during the Holocaust? Idiot! Aren't you even going to think about that? Isn't that a big problem? Yeah, sure. Oh, so what? He was a globalist. How about those 200 to 300,000 Jews that he mercilessly wiped off the face of the planet that we will never get back? How about those people? It makes me sick. It makes me sick when people lie about the most evil man in history. No, but in all seriousness, that's a joke, of course. That's a joke. We know that the number was closer probably to at least 1 billion. The fundamental point that she brings up on a serious note is correct. When people think about nationalism, they do think about Hitler. She's right about that. And nationalism, the way that we consider it, the only proper way to regard it is the nation. The nation being a people, not a country, not geographic boundaries, right? Not a sovereign, not a particular government or regime, but the people. And that's why it's important to point out that when we're talking about Hitler and the German nation, well, it's true. The German nation, as considered by Hitler, was the German people, the people who were similar in customs, mannerisms, language, ancestry, history, all those different things. Yeah, that's probably more authentically the German nation than this political thing that was built in 1871, right? And so properly considered, nationalism is ethnic nationalism. When we hear nationalism and it's defamed by the media and so on, what they're talking about is ethnic nationalism, the idea that the nation is not the country, it is the people. Are you a tribal nationalist? Are you an ethnic nationalist? Or are you an inclusive nationalist? Inclusive. Meaning everybody can be a part of the nation. Of course, that's a non-starter. If everybody is a part of your nation, nobody is in your nation. When she says that people associate nationalism with Hitler, she means when people associate ethnic nationalism with Hitler. And she's right about that. People do associate ethnic nationalism with Hitler. Anytime you talk about, in this country, white people organizing for themselves, anytime you talk about ethnic-based nationalism, which is the simple idea that the people who built and founded the country have a right to remain in the majority in that country. That crazy idea that, yeah, we founded it, we settled it, we built everything, maybe we're entitled to be in the majority here. That idea. The reason people don't want to talk about that, the reason people can't embrace that, which is common sense and moral, is because people associate it with a little guy named Adolf Hitler. Anytime you bring up ethnic nationalism, white identity, yeah, who do you think of? Adolf Hitler, the bad man that killed all those people. Well, I don't know, maybe it's a good idea that America should be white, but also by the same token, that sounds like the bad guy. That sounds like the guy that I was taught, from cradle to grave, that was the most evil person. There can be no recourse about that. There can be no debate about that. Look at Joseph Stalin. People are walking around these days on college campuses with the hammer and sickle. It's on Twitter. Joseph Stalin killed a lot of people too. Why isn't that as bad as the swastika? Well, because Joseph Stalin represents something very different than Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler represents ethnic nationalism, a very big threat to the people that run the country. And I'm not, don't read into that too much, but people that thrive on mass migration, cheap labor, votes, people that thrive on an international or transnational identity, the natural enemy of those people who profit off of all kinds of people, all kinds of investment, all kinds of capital coming from everywhere, making America just a shopping mall, a common market. The natural enemy of those people, the billionaires, people like Jeff Bezos, is the ethnic nationalist who says, no. We don't care if the GDP gets higher. We don't care if we get cheaper products in Walmart. When other people come to our country, they degrade the texture of life. They make it different. And so even if it's cheaper, even if the economy's better, they turn the nation into something that it is not. They pervert it, they change it, and that's not acceptable. And so that's why it has to be associated with Hitler. So she's actually quite right about that. She's right that's that mythology is so important in demonizing nationalism. That's why you can never identify as anything more than a civic nationalist. That's why your conception of nationalism can never be anything beyond or in addition to the idea that we have to defend the Constitution. It can never be about defending your neighborhood or your race or your people. That's why it can never go beyond, because of the mythology, because of that which lingers over, the long shadow cast by that one man. I might say that's deliberate. Some might say that's deliberate. You might start to wonder, why is it illegal to question certain things in Europe? Why is it basically illegal to have a contrary opinion? He was a statesman. He was a statesman like other statesmen. People regard Joseph Stalin as a statesman. People regard Nikita Khrushchev as a statesman. Khrushchev, who was a butcher. They called him the Butcher of Budapest. Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, butchers. All psychotic mass murderers in the same way as Hitler. And so why is it that for every other statesperson, we can look at them in an intellectual way and divorce it from the horrible crimes, Mao Zedong, all kinds of others. But with this guy, oh, God forbid, you can't look at what allowed him to rise. What was it that united the German people in such a way? Why did they? Oh, well, he just brainwashed them. Oh, yeah, it's that easy. He just brainwashed them to scapegoat a group of people, and, it's just that simple. His speeches were that good. He just brainwashed everybody, and it was all him. He's the devil, right? So you really have to think about that, the founding mythology. But you got to introduce a little nuance in, and I think that's how you understand our current political paradigm and what is not acceptable. So it's an important conversation. She's she's dumb. She's obviously diversity hire. She's the communications director, and she's going out there saying, well, the only thing Hitler did wrong was that he was a globalist, and she ruined the Kanye West thing. So I don't know. It's almost like diversity hires. It's almost like maybe Turning Point USA should take their own advice about meritocracy and, not giving into identity politics. Or maybe it's also nice to have a black girl in the top ranks.
The mythology of Hitler is so important in the present political conversation. So, while it is bad optics, there does have to be a reconciliation with the fact that 70 or 80 years later, we're still living in the shadow of this ideological fight between the Marxists, the Bolsheviks, and the fascists or the Nazis. If we could engage for a moment in a little bit of critical thought here, history and the left and the media, they need a figure like Hitler. They need Hitler to have existed. They need Hitler to have existed in exactly the way that they said he did, which is as a villain, and there can never be an alternative opinion. You can never even second guess the historical record. And not only was he a villain, but he was pathetic. And he had one ball, and they have to emasculate him. It wasn't sufficient. He's unquestionably the great villain, but also he was this sad guy. And the reason they need it is because this is their shortcut to invalidating anything that is white solidarity, anything that is white racial consciousness, anything that is nationalist, anything that is traditionalist. Because, of course, what is always the knee-jerk reflexive impulse of the left when you talk about white consciousness, about the beauty of white people, the survival of white people? Oh, what are you? Adolf Hitler? What are you, a Nazi? And what is the one thing, for an R-rated movie where it's graphic violence and nudity and all the rest, it's 18 and up. But they'll show you from the time you're 5 years old in every public school, now it's mandated in every public school, I think in many states, that they show the most graphic images of people in the camps. And, never mind that, some of them died from typhus, and never mind that some of them died from other things. They're going to show the propaganda reel. They're going to show the whole wartime, what they call atrocity propaganda. The left needs that to stop critical thinking. The left needs that to shut down conversation. But that's why they can never allow a conversation on it, because if there was a conversation about, what really happened? Who really was this guy? Can we have another position on it? Well, then the entire infrastructure, the entire mythology crumbles, because right now the left relies on that to have Antifa, to have left-wing ANCOM violence and all the rest, is because fascism is evil and it's taking over. And, God forbid we had a strong and charismatic orator who led the nation in some less than liberal fashion. God forbid that ever happens.
Well, you also left out one thing. If Hitler isn't the ultimate villain, then Stalin is.
True.
You know what I'm saying? So if you can always make Hitler the ultimate villain, then Stalin, for all of his 60 million people that he killed and for all of the ruin that he brought on his own country, he fought against the ultimate evil. So therefore he can get a pass. And therefore communism is not such a bad thing because it beat Hitler.
Well, you have to think about people. And you have to think about how people get their ideas, how people become the way that they are. And by and large, we're a product of our childhood. When we grow up, from the time we're born until the time we're an adult, and even after, when we're a little bit older, through college and through into the workforce, we are basically force-fed a diet that is regulated, by a very particular group of people. You call them leftists. Some might call them something else. Some might call them various names.
I don't have a problem saying that Jews.
I would never say it's Jews. It's globalists. It's globalists. Yeah, right.
Globalists.